marketing has been the foundation of what we built. And I'll get transparent about numbers. This year we spent close to like,
I think where a lot of doctors try to shy away from social media is because they may not deem it as the most professional thing to do. But one thing about us, we're always going to be professional, but because we want people to be comfortable, you have to break that first barrier.
How bad does somebody have to be before you buy?
my dog,
For sure.
1 year, man. Blessed to be here. I am Dr. DeVonte Johnson of Eastside Dental. We're open nights and weekends.
Dr. DeJuanquaries Stephens, Eastside Dental as well.
Let's start from the beginning. So let's talk about like getting to practice and looking for the practice for people that were interested. Just kind of talk about what the process was, what we kind of went through from your perspective, and I can kind of get my perspective as well.
Well, initially, for us, I know one thing we wanted to do was make sure we had space. A lot of new offices, they come on with one doc. The fact that there's two of us, and we feel like we're pretty comfortable in terms of our abilities in dentistry. So we know we needed space. Outside of that, okay, the goal was Eastside Dental Group. So Eastside Dental Group, where's it going to be? Location, and also thinking about our friends and family and peers, and just try to make it as accommodating as possible for them. So we got to the drawing boards and tried to figure out those things. And I guess it was a matter of if we're going to acquire or we're going to do a startup.
Great point. Yeah.
So
And I think that's probably the biggest thing of like trying to see, oh, you're going to do startup or acquisition. And I think for us, of course, we end up going, technically, is it an acquisition? Technically, it's an acquisition, but we went with a shell practice, right? And essentially with a shell practice, what that is um, it's an office that doesn't have patients associated with it. And what you're able to do is get the price of the practice down super low. So we was able to get the affordable deal for the practice, opposed to kind of just going and having to just buy a practice outright, because the actual patients is what give the practice value.
absolutely.
So going back and looking at that part, what's your thoughts on acquisition versus startup?
Outside of our
Yeah,
situation, I would definitely lean towards acquisition,
got you.
just due to the fact that it allows someone to learn. But since we're strictly talking about us, I love the way that we went about it. As you know, I'm pretty frugal, so the fact that we got a shell, it didn't have patience. So with that being said, it's okay. Well, what are we going to do to kind of beef this thing up a little bit? And the fact that it had everything that was working already inside. Now it's just a matter of us finding a way to get some patients in and just believing in us and our abilities. I figured we was going to get it going. So I definitely like the route we took. So
Yeah,
shell
yeah,
route.
100%. I think the biggest thing too is like realizing when you start in the practice is that you can the bank gonna give you the money for whatever you're trying to do, right? So you're gonna get the money from the bank. The bank will really give us whatever. I think you just need to make sure you structure your loan in a way to where you are in the best position possible. I think coming into it, when you're getting all this money from the bank, they're giving you all these different vendors and different groups and different fees, and you can easily run out of money.
Very
So, I
quickly.
mean, we can even get more transparent about that, right? So, even for us, when we came in, we really wanted to run a lean operation where we're like, all right, look, we want to buy this practice. We want to spend as least amount of money as possible to be able to open it. And we realized through the process that we needed way more money,
Much more.
way more money than we thought, right? So I think that's a very important thing for people to know is that whenever you go into this practice ownership thing, however much money the bank is going to give you, take the max amount of money.
Absolutely. Because you just never know what's going to come about.
Right.
For example, in our case, I know we were thinking, okay, this is going to be our set start date. And with construction, with renovations, staffing, it always gets pushed back. And you just never know what you're going to find once you start peeling back the layers. So I definitely second we got to have as much money as possible.
Yeah, yeah. I think another thing that we kind of messed up on initially was that we came into the actual, so it's a shell practice, but we didn't like the way it looked. So we came into the shell practice and we wanted to renovate the practice. But we went into the renovation without a plan. So no architectural plans, no nothing, just kind of like
Piecemeal.
Yeah. Like we want to raise the ceilings. You know what I'm saying? We want to do new floors. We want to do this. And I think going into that, like not with a solid plan, that extended out what the operation could have been, like the length of how long it took.
Absolutely.
Because we started what July 8th,
24, July 24th.
July 24th. We were supposed to be done in September. We ain't finished till like March.
Yeah, really.
You know what I'm saying? And that's just because like we were just, okay, look, we got to do this now. We got to do this now. So I think if you are planning on getting a shell or acquisition and you want to do some renovations, I think it's important to come in with a system, a plan to be able to execute. And then now you can even kind of go back and forth with the contractors to ensure you on schedule with the
Right.
plan. Because that was one of our things where we were on different pages with the contractors at different points because it was just like we didn't really have a plan to start off with.
At what point did y'all say, like, oh man, I need to start thinking about building a spot?
I think it was always a part of the mission eventually. But I think like anything, you just as a good craftsman, you want to just get good first, right? So we both took our own separate journeys. You can speak on that as well. We both kind of took our own separate journeys with just getting good, right? So that's just working for different practice owners, working in different systems, taking different courses, right? Just sharpening the axe to get prepared. And then also going out getting the different advice of how to run the business of dentistry, right? Which is a separate entity of its own. I will argue that is the hardest part. I think the clinical part is the part that we put so much emphasis on because we went to school for that. But the business is probably like 70% of the actual what makes the thing run. But yeah, I think ownership was always a part of the mission. And when I was kind of thinking about things from my perspective, um, I knew that I wanted to partner because once you kind of go down into the grassroots of everything, you realize how much work this stuff really take. And I just rather build with a collective. But I knew I wanted to build though.
Absolutely. No, I second that too. I guess in my case, what I can say is it was always a part of the mission, part of the goal. I guess our biggest thing was the fact that we've seen a lot, and just the fact that we're proudful men, and understanding that dentistry, going throughout the process, you're always told, okay, at some point you're gonna have your own practice. So that was always in the back of our mind. But the fact that we have that sense of pride and sense of ownership within ourselves, it was like, well, they're doing this, we can do this. They're doing that, we can do this. And it's just a matter of kind of betting on yourself. And then a lot of times with our peer reviews, a lot of our friends and stuff, we'll talk. We're seeing a lot of the same things. Although we had our own journeys that we took, we kind of realized that we saw a lot of things in a similar manner. It was like, you know what? One thing about us, we always gonna bet on ourselves. So let's go and try this out. And talks became contracts. Contracts became where we are today.
So yeah, man, I mean, that's kind of like the foundation of what we built. And then, through that process, okay, trying to acquire the practice, trying to then think about, all right, what's going to be the thing that the actual offer. And I think that's what we kind of spent the most time building out. Like, because I think anybody could build a practice, anybody could focus on, um, getting the loan from the bank. And it is a tough process, but after you kind of get through the humps and hurdles of the construction and everything else, it then becomes a situation where it's like, okay, what is going to make my practice stand out amongst all our other practices? And I think our biggest thing is we honed in on availability, right? That's the simple thing that we did. We came into the game. We had got exposed to this by working in different practices that we knew that were open 7 days a week. It wasn't a super unique thing to us, but we knew that other people haven't seen it at grand scale. And we was like, you know what? We want to come into the game. We want to be open nights and weekends.
It was like a bridging the gap type of thing. A lot of dentists are conditioned to have a practice 4 days a week, 5 days a week, and just kind of relax on weekends. But like I said, we've seen a lot of things that's pretty similar. So the fact that we've seen emergency care, and just how much of a need is in that aspect of dentistry, but as well as preaching availability. A lot of people work 8, 9 to 5, and as tough as the economy is right now, it just wouldn't make that much sense. We feel like we're being selfish if we were to just do something from 8 to 4. And like you said, what makes us different from the next Jack and Jill down the road? So you got to think about who's available and when do emergencies happen, but also when is it convenient for people to come in and see what we got going on, and also just make them more aware of what's going on. So that's kind of how we found that sweet spot of being open all 7 days, and we see emergencies. We also have comprehensive care as well.
All right, I'm gonna ask y'all a question that y'all probably not gonna like, but here we go. What was some of the offers that y'all thought about, but were like, that's not gonna work for us?
So initially we wanted to be, we call it Eastside Dental, right? We really wanted to be on the east side of the city. So we were looking at like Decatur, areas in that vicinity, because we want to be on the east side. Like we were supported in that area. We come from that area. We wanted to kind of go back to that area. So we started looking for spots over there. The biggest thing is that like we couldn't come to terms with like the finances with other providers that wanted to sell to us. So like one specific provider, like it was just like it was a proper spot. It looked great. It was everything that we wanted, but like we just couldn't come to terms on the agreement. And it's just like one of those things where if the bank is going to like the bank is who pays for these practices, right? So if the bank doesn't finance it or won't finance to a certain point, they're going to ask for tax returns, and that's how they come up with their number. And if the tax returns and everything that you're saying revenue wise don't kind of add up, then they're not going to do it, right? So we kind of had bearings about that. That was one part. The other thing too was the flat shows one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, a lot of, you just realize when how people run their businesses, like it's a lot of like short change stuff going on, a lot of backdoor stuff going on. Like some people have taken out SBA loans on the practices. They might have a lien on their practice, right? Like it was a lot of like COVID kind of switched up a lot for a lot of these dental offices. And you got to kind of be savvy enough to be able to navigate and do the due diligence, because initially for us, we were trying to come in, we thought about just buying a practice outright, no loan. So we were thinking about like, look, man, this practice it's a shell. And technically, we can kind of be transparent about numbers. Generally, shells are under $100,000 for a shell for the most part. So we were thinking about just outright buying. It was a couple shells that was popping up, and we probably would have got finesse crazy if we didn't do our due diligence, because man, the doc ended up having a lien against the assets. He had took money out on the SBA loan. So the SBA loan had basically first right of refusal. First right of refusal. And it was like a lien against all the assets. So if he would have sold the practice to us, he had to pay back that loan. It was just a lot of stuff, man. So those are the main two. I don't know if it's
and that comes with like peeling back the layers as well. It taught us very early on, lose the emotion at the door. Like you said, there was one practice that, like I said, we fell in love with. We really wanted. One, it just wasn't in God's plans for us. But then two, as the other provider had, their request for a certain dollar aspect in terms of selling the business, if the bank isn't going to fund it, it just doesn't make sense. So, at the end of the day, we have a goal that we're trying to accomplish, and we can't wait on you to find a number that makes sense for you when our life is still going and we're still trying to provide, excellent care to the patient. So we got to keep going. And just like you said, there was another practice that was on the east side as well, all flat shows. We thought it was going to be a great opportunity for us. But once we continue to peel back the layers, we saw we would have been third down in line. And it made sense for him because he wanted us to pay out of pocket. Yeah. But that would have definitely came back and bit us in the butt, probably present day. So, another, missile that we dodged for sure. So
what's another example of y'all having to leave the emotion at the door?
We can speak about banks. There's certain banks, you hear, of course, the main lenders, of course, that we see driving around the road. But there's also a few that, mom and pop shops or, family owned, or credit unions and things like that. So a lot of times they'll say, well, you need this dollar figure in your account, your personal accounts for so long. And it doesn't matter if you have a business account, a personal account, they want to see it in that one individual account, even if it is related. And that can really frustrate you because it's like, well, I have the money. I am my business. I am myself. So why can't we look at this together? And they're like, well, unfortunately, you're going to have to add 6 more months of having this into your account for us to even consider giving you some funds. And it's like, okay, well, that's pretty frustrating. So
Yeah. What else, man? I think you kind of had that crossroad with like staffing, right? So, you know, understanding that you control people's livelihood. So being able to approach things with an open mind and open perspective um, is something that you got to kind of lead the emotion at the door about, because you know most people are gonna do what's best for them, right? And for some people, we're just a stop in their full journey, and kind of understanding that, right? So not necessarily buying into um, getting too emotional about how people handle you or how staff handle you in certain situations. Of course, we're gonna always demand respect, right? But one thing I always say to people is like, our staff, they're not our family, right? We have our own families. Our staff, they work with us. This is a great working environment. We pay our staff extremely well. We incentivize those people, but family will cut you, family will hurt you, and you start putting your heart on the line and trying to share all this emotion around how you do things with people, and it gets a little too emotional in those spaces. So again, we're empathetic about a lot of the work that we do, and we support them in a ton of capacities. But I think we had to learn the hard way, because we young looking, you know what I mean? Like they try us, man. Like people, they try you, because you come off so cool and you so relaxed, and everybody think that it's a certain way that you got to do things, and you really got to operate this business super stern, because I'd rather be uh, I'd rather be respected than loved.
that's a bar.
Yeah.
He's been saying it for some time. So
Stand on this course of staffing. How bad does somebody have to be before you fire them?
it's not even necessarily about someone being bad per se. It's if I have to question your judgment or your integrity, you're out the door. Because we're building and understanding dentistry is a very um, intimate setting, very intimate environment. So while we're focused on someone's mouth trying to provide the best healthcare possible, who knows what you're doing up front? And if we go and circle the cameras and see something, and it's just like that's not right. At the end of the day, we all know right from wrong.
Yeah.
We're all adults. The moment I feel as if you made a bad choice that wasn't beneficial for the company, whether it's beneficial for yourself or anything like that, that's a zero tolerance policy for that. We like you said, we make sure we incentivize them well, we treat them well, but at the end of the day, Eastside Dental Group is always going to reign supreme, and I'll stand on that forever.
They gotta be bad. You know what I'm saying? I feel like we give a lot of second chances about perspective, because the biggest thing for us, number one, is for me specifically, is and you would probably agree to that too, is like a culture fit, right? So we're looking for like energy, right? Because healthcare is so stale a lot of times, and people have communicated um, so many bad experiences. I think people forget that healthcare is hospitality, right? We don't really get that energy because the environment doesn't support that, right? You walk into these healthcare facilities, and the waiting rooms are very stale. The waiting rooms don't got no energy to them. It doesn't smell great, right? It doesn't feel warm, all those type things. But that's what people are used to. So I think for us, it's like you got to come in with that energy. You got to want to be there. And a lot of times, wanting to be there start with paying them. It's got to be what it is, man. I truly believe that loyalty is bought and they come to this game. Pay them well, right? That's the foundation of it. But then on top of that, making sure that they equipped with the principles that we kind of live by. So like one of our things when I talk about energy, we always talk about Disney, right? So we want that Disney type energy. When you answer the phone, I need you, come on, like they need to be able to feel the energy through the phone that you're excited and that you're looking to help them, et cetera, et cetera. These are things that again are missing, like, and it's because like the bar for healthcare is so low, unfortunately. But that's how we look at it. We look at it as this is hospitality. We want to make sure you serve people at a high level. So again, if it's not an energy fit, that's really like an immediate, like you probably like that's an immediate go. And then the second thing, like he was saying, would be integrity, right? So integrity is what are you doing when nobody's watching, right? So uh, we try to reduce a lot of the BS that kind of happens because a lot of integrity issues in dentistry usually it revolve around money, right? It's always some money. Like you can hear stories like embezzlement, all type of stuff. That's across the board. People is always some type of thing with money. So they don't touch none of that for the most part.
That's
They
hey,
don't touch no checks that come in. When cash does come in, it got to be written a certain way. It got to be on envelopes. It gets distributed a certain way. Like it's a whole process around that. So we just try to reduce the opportunities for somebody to have to think about an unethical decision. But yeah, those are the main two things. Like if you don't have the energy, that's immediate go. And then if you do something that goes against like the integrity of the business, then that's an immediate go to. Yeah. I'm gonna ask you a question. So what's one thing you would do differently than how we did it this past time, going around this past year?
definitely get started sooner.
Yeah.
That's always at the top of my list. But at the end of the day, I
Are you
think
saying bought a practice sooner?
yes,
Okay.
yeah,
I feel that.
yeah, definitely we could have bought sooner. I mean, maybe not too much sooner, maybe like within like a year or so.
Yeah.
But then also maybe take like a 2 week time frame prior to, I guess, breaking ground on construction to get our bearings together, because technically speaking, we didn't kind of hit our we didn't hit a roll or our momentum until August,
Yeah.
September or so. And I think we would have things aligned properly, such as construction, such as, just everything that's aligned. Um, we could have, when we opened in March, we would have been ready to go.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think definitely could have jumped out the port sooner. We just you never gonna be like fully ready, but I feel like once you kind of get to a point where you're clinically confident, you should just go ahead and if you want to be an owner, you should just jump into the game. Especially if you're thinking about going into like an acquisition or something like that. You should just jump into the game, buy a practice, because it's gonna be a lot of learning on the like through the
Yeah,
process.
no matter when you start, the learning, the lessons are going to be there. So,
Yeah, 100%.
what would you say for yourself?
Yeah, so I think I would have. I don't know, man. I think we pretty much ran it. We ran this route. We ran this route perfect, though. I ain't gonna lie. Like, it's not really much I would do differently. I think um well, I will say this. We could have went 7 days a week faster.
True.
I
Yeah.
will say that. That we already knew we wanted to go 7 days a week. I felt like we held back from going 7 days a week just because it was just kind of like we really had to like stand on the business. Like we saying we this type of practice. Are we gonna do it? And we literally was at an event and we were just like, dog, like the phones is ringing off the hooks and people want to come in. Like we have to open up every day.
Hmm.
And we just made the decision because, when we first opened, we both were working at different jobs. We were both just trying to like fill in. We weren't taking any money from the business. So I think we should have just jumped out the gate. I truthfully felt like if we would have structured the business or the rollout of things faster or better, we could have came into the game 7 days a week.
I agree. I
I feel
agree.
like we could have came into the game 7 days a week, and I think it would have crushed.
Absolutely.
It would have
No,
crushed
but you
from the
got
beginning. I mean, we did it how we did it, but I feel like we could have came into the game 7 days a week, and if we would have structured it properly with all the promo and stuff, we could have filled all them appointments, and it would have crushed from the beginning.
What would you say was probably one of the more difficult things or difficult lessons that you learned since, being an owner or, coming up with Eastside Dental Group?
Yeah.
Or what's the hardest day-to-day task? How about that?
Hardest day to day task. Hardest day to day task. Um, I think just managing people because the way we structured it is we're the only hierarchy, right? So we don't have office manager, we don't got lead assistants, we don't have any of that. So because of that, a lot of the nitty gritty stuff comes to us. So I think that's the part where it's we gotta kind of watch every little piece of things, and I think eventually we'll get into a point where we can put somebody in position that's going to handle those little pieces that would kind of push it forward. That's probably the hardest day to day, but clinically, everything pretty much straightforward. Uh, you know, them occasional wisdom teeth, you know what I'm saying? That might throw me off sometime. But for the most part, that's it.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm with you there.
What you say about that as well for yourself?
Definitely leaning towards people. But I guess if I can pick a different answer away from yourself, it's just making sure I'm staying on time. I'm a pretty punctual person.
Yeah.
And I love that about myself, or I try to, hold myself to that standard. And I understand that we are trying to welcome as many people as possible into the practice. And the goal is always to say yes. It's just a matter of how we're going to get there. And sometimes those yeses can sometimes interfere with someone else's time.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing about trying to, welcome you in, but just make sure that, you divvied out this time in your day to come in Eastside Dental and your appointments for an hour. I want to get you in and out in an hour. So that's my biggest thing, is just trying to just, juggle the excess. But
Yeah.
I mean, I still enjoy it for sure. So
Yeah.
What's the piece of conventional advice that should theoretically work for everybody, but didn't work for y'all?
I would say, I think a lot of people, I'm leaning towards like how you structure your practice, right? So with conventional dental practice loans, they set aside like, okay, just say for numbers sake, you get $1 million, right? They break off a certain amount for construction, certain amount for equipment, certain amount for everything else. Well, traditional dental practice loans, they only budget $20,000 for marketing. Impossible. Literally $20,000 for marketing. And marketing has been the foundation of what we built. And I'll get transparent about numbers. This year we spent close to like $200,000 on marketing, right? And you saw all the things that we did, right? From influencer stuff, we did mailers, we tried everything. We shirts, merch, radio, Hispanic radio stations. We did every facet of marketing. And now we kind of honed in. We got like ad funnels, we got Google ads. Now we've tried everything, know what works, and kind of scale back how much we spend on marketing. But in the early parts, we were spending like $20,000 a month. And the budget is $20,000 for the whole project. So I think that part is what sets up a lot of practices to move a lot slower than how we approached it. I think we came into the game like guerrilla marketing, aggressive. And that's how we got to the position that we both went full time into the practice, like 6 months into the practice, because we had invested so much money into the marketing. And that's the thing about it. I think people don't understand that there's only two ways to get customers marketing wise. It's either through organic marketing or it's paid marketing, right? So organic, that's social media posts, that's shout outs, that's word of mouth, etc. Or it's paid marketing, right? That's direct mail, that's billboards, that's radio ads, that's Facebook, that's Google, etc. If you're not doing either one of them, I don't know how people gonna find you. You know what I mean? And I think that's one thing that I would communicate to other practice owners to do a little bit differently, is like, when you get allocated this money from the bank, I would set aside at least 150,000.
at least.
At least 150,000 for that first year for marketing.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, because we knew the approach we were going to take. Even if they don't spend that 100 to 150,000, I say lean towards 100. Kind of finding out in your area what works for you. I know for us, we spent at least about, what you say, like 70 on mailers.
70,000
on mailers.
on mailers.
So that was something that unfortunately just didn't really work for us. But you have to. He makes a great point. I always say, throw something at the wall and see what sticks. But you have to continue to throw something at the wall. And it's so many different ways for people to hear about you. And another thing that he says a lot that I like is, no one is special in this game. Everyone thinks every dentist can do the exact same thing. So now how am I going to make my business stand out more so you can come see us? Okay, well, I want you to see that I'm a familiar face. I'm someone that you may see, when you go out to dinner on a Saturday night, see someone that looks just like me, or you may see your favorite athlete may look similar to us, and we listen to the same type of music. So we want to find whatever niche that works for you to make you say, okay, I want to come in and give these guys a try. So
Social media wise, what marketing has worked for y'all, and why has it been worked?
TikTok has taken us through the roof. I can't tell no story. Then also just because we're putting ourselves out in front of it, where a lot of people, kind of want to hide behind rocks and things like that. So in our case, it's like, no, we want you to see that we are just like you. Before he and I are a doctor, anything, we're people. We put on our pants one leg at a time, just like the next person. So because of that, it's like, hey, the same social media influencers that you like, and you like all their posts, we like the posts too. So why not collab with them so you can see them? And now guess what? You're going to see us. And that just continued to roll, and it just avalanche down the hill. And, it's been very, very fruitful for us. It's been very, lucrative. And, the business has been, running pretty smoothly because of it. So.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Most dentists, they're like, no TikTok. But y'all saying TikTok has been killing for y'all.
Oh yeah, 100%. It ain't even close. I think we were kind of initially like on that as well, like kind of like, I wouldn't say hide behind the brand, but we weren't just trying to be just so forward facing of like it being about us. Like we wanted it to just be about the brand, like Eastside Dental. We wanted the hours in that to be enough, which I felt like it could be, but it's just like sometimes you got to leverage your superpower, and it's like we young fly dentists that people ain't seen before. So it's kind of like, why not get in front of that? And I feel like that kind of helped sell the story even more. So when they seen that we were cool, but then also saw the hours and then also saw all the efforts, right? So, they saw the Magic City stuff. They saw the American Deli stuff. Again, I think one positive thing is like, underrated thing is leveraging those trusted voices in the culture and partnering with those influencers that do that stuff, because they, like, it don't matter what they influence people to do. It could be eat food, it could be they funny, it could be whatever. But those trusted voices, literally, like, people listen to them. You know what I'm saying? So like, if you can partner with them, no matter where they are in your community, I think that's an easy way to kind of build a following. I think the difference too with us though is that we partner with those people, but then we also have a very attractive offer, right? So we offer free cleanings, which is regardless if you are insured or not. If you don't have insurance, we offer free cleanings for all patients. We probably the only office in Georgia that do that, right? That offer is so attractive. So when you match that attractive offer with a dope influencer, with some type of marketing initiative, it's just gonna blow, right? And it was just a matter of time for people to catch on. You don't know what's gonna work, but I think what helped our thing work was because of how attractive our offer was as well.
I also think it's a thin line as well with some of the social media. I think where a lot of doctors try to shy away from social media is because it may not deem it as the most professional thing to do.
Yeah.
But one thing about us, we're always going to be professional. But because we want people to be comfortable, you have to break that first barrier. And like I said, we'll remain professional, but we'll allow those influencers to do whatever they normally do to attract those people. And then with that, they can say, okay, these guys are like you said, young fly dentists who like these type of things, but also I feel like I can trust them with my health. So
100%. I think another thing we got to say is that we built this like, and I would say, like, arguably this is, I mean, super successful in a year, right? But we did it all and we did not post a single post of dentistry, meaning we did not post a single before and after picture. We did not post anything about a tooth extraction, nothing that was a clinical photo of a before. We didn't do any of that this entire year. So what does that mean, right? So to me, that means that availability reigns supreme over everything, right? Being available, being a practice that does great service. Like we're approaching right now, when this airs, we'll be at 1,000 5-star Google reviews, which is crazy after a year. So I think there's a way to still, again, the offer is attractive. Create a great offer that people want. Be available, do great work. And I think you still could build a practice that is super successful. You don't necessarily have to fit into the box of what people think needs to happen for your practice to do really well.
Would any of y'all like to just speak a little bit on that? How to find your thing?
You got to have your ears to the streets.
Yeah.
I mean, even outside of everything you just said, young black fly, whatever the case may be, once we remove ourselves from it, it's when we say it's about the patient, right? So what is it that they need? Okay, patients, you got to think of the single mom who, works 8 to 4 and got to pick up her kids at 5. So how can she get in there knowing that she can't take any PTO? So how can she, take care of herself and take care of her kid at the same time? Once you said availability reigns supreme. Okay, and then think about the next person. Oh, they have pain on a Sunday. I got to go to sleep with this. It's Super Bowl Sunday. I want to get my tooth fixed so I can enjoy the Super Bowl. It doesn't matter if you're, however you look, Jack, Jill, Tom, whoever. At the end of the day, they think every dentist can do the same job because we all went to one of the accredited dental schools here in the U.S. So because of that, they think we're all the same. So yeah, we have that extra little oomph about us that can get some people in, but at the end of the day, it's always gonna be availability. You gotta put yourself out there to be seen. And you gotta, let the world know that, okay, even if I say it's about the patient, I can't just say that because it sounds good. It got to be about the patient. And one thing about Eastside Dental, we're gonna make sure it's about the patient. So regardless, like I know it was a point in time, we probably went maybe like consecutively like 112 days, somewhere around there, 112, 115, where both of us was in the practice 7 days a week.
Straight.
Nonstop. 7
Every
days.
day.
7 days.
Every day.
No vacations. 7 days head down for the patients.
Every day.
So what we say is really what it is, and I think that's the biggest thing. So like I said, I could put a cape on and walk out here looking crazy. I think people still come in just because what we say is what we mean. So
yeah, I'm gonna add on to that. So one of the biggest things of our practice being available, right, is emergencies. Because we are available, we get a lot of dental emergencies, right? Now think about emergencies. When you think about the emergency room, if it's an emergency, most of the time, 90% of the time, the patient's in pain, right? When somebody's in pain, they really don't care who they see, right? So that's one thing I would do in positioning myself as a practice, right? I would position myself with my hours and my availability so that I could convert on emergency patients, right? If we looked at it from a hospital standpoint, if you have an emergency situation going on at a hospital and you go to an ER, you don't know who the doctor is behind the wall. You just want to get seen and you want to get serviced, right? The opportunity on dentistry is a little bit different. Now think about it. If I'm available, patient comes in and they're in pain, they're very vulnerable in that state, and I'm able to service them, help them, right? They might even have their another dentist that they were going to. But now I have the opportunity now to convert them to my patient because I was there when they needed me the most. That is the game. And I think that's an underrepresented part of the game that people miss out on because they're not available, right? So we convert a lot of patients into normal patients because we caught them in a very vulnerable state because they were in an emergent situation. So I think to me, that's a number one strategy I would dive into outside of the marketing. So just regardless if you fly or whatever you want to call it, if I was starting today, I would have a practice that was open late and open on the weekends. That would be the number one thing I feel like that's what the number one driver, in my opinion.
inconvenience yourself to make it convenient for the next person.
Bar.
Year 2. But now that seeing that we have our bearings in place and this place is, the knob is cranked all the way up. Now it's just a matter of honing in on those super nitty-ditty, like Greek detailed type things. So I know one thing he and I are priding ourselves on this year is making sure that we make sure our staff is knowing that they are a representation of us. They have to go to more courses. They have to, be more attentive. We're going to have additional meetings. We're going to share goals and things with them so they know exactly where we're trying to go. Because if you don't know where the finish line is, you don't really know where to run. So we tell them, okay, at the end of this month, our finish line is this, in terms of we want to see this many patients, we want, this many reviews or whatever the case may be. Then they have a goal that they can strive for. And seeing that we are, very incentive heavy for our staff, that can just kind of encourage them a little bit more to work. And then another thing I'll say is, me and DeVonte, we're going to take more business type classes as well, more business classes as well as more dental specific courses. When you have a business, you can easily, put the blinders on and just focus on it. But the world around us is changing regardless of what we have going on inside of, our four walls. So because of that, we're going to make sure we take additional courses, learn what else is going on in dentistry so we can provide, just that much more of a supreme service to our patients.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like you was saying, like year one was just about hustling, right? Proving it to ourselves that we could do it. And we did that. And I think year two is about expansion and then fine tuning systems, because that's what we want. We want a lot of these tasks to be reproducible. So setting goals for each person, having different roles that people run, and I think also just being able to have like a functional system where we have like these quarterly meetings to be able to follow up on these bigger tasks. Um, Outside of that, I mean, we definitely want to also become a little bit more like vertically integrated. So we want to dive into more media plays, right? So we're looking at doing some short film stuff, telling stories around healthcare, more products, right? So we diving into a lot of different product lines, thinking about you know, all type of stuff, just anything dental related. We want to build around that because it's just like it's just the opportunity for people to support in that capacity. Like if you're coming to a dental office and how many times has somebody asked us, what toothpaste should we be using? You know, why don't we make our own toothpaste? You know what I mean? So just thinking about different parallels of things that we can build product wise. Um, Outside of that, more marketing. Same thing, getting better at it. We want to do a lot more in the dental sleep space. Sleep is like an untapped area. There's a lot of people battling sleep issues, sleep disorders, and they're looking for alternatives for CPAP machines. So we want to dive a lot into CPAP, dental sleep appliances. And then also we will start showing our work, the dental work soon, right? It's just for us, it's just a capacity thing, right? Because all right, we start showing this work and we don't have the space to be able to what am I looking for? What's the word? The space to be able to bring those people in. You kind of it doesn't work. You kind of working against yourself. So with us expanding and knowing that we're about to build out on this other side of the building, I think that now positions us to where we can kind of advertise certain things and also provide new offers. And I think that'd be a dope thing for us too.
What do you tell your day one sales a year ago?
I would tell my day one self, you had it right. You had it right. But continue to not give yourself any grace. This world is not a place to play around. This world is not a place to think that you got it when you don't have it. So I think because I had that mindset, it allowed me to continue to push forward. And like I said, iron sharpens iron. So with that being said, it's like, no, we're not where we want to be. So the minute you let off the throttle, like anything else, you slow down. So I would tell my day one self, keep going, because this can really be something that you couldn't even have imagined. And that's what we're still chasing right now.
Yeah. I would tell my day one self, bet bigger, bet bigger, bet bigger. Everything in my life, like whenever I bet big, it always like,
Surpass.
yeah, it always surpassed where I'm betting at. So I would have bet even bigger. Like we should have came into the game open 7 days a week and just got into it and got into the mud and just started fighting. You know what I mean? Like I should have quit my job going into it and just didn't work and just went back against the wall. I would have bet bigger. Um, I'm grateful for the process though, because through all of that, we were able to learn. And we're able to turn profits very fast, but I would have bet bigger.
It's been a hell of a year. It's been a great year. I'm thankful for the lessons. I know he's thankful for the lessons. We're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to try to meet you all where you are. Year 2 is going to be something different, but it's going to be a great thing. And I'm appreciative that you all are here to witness it. But then also, I want to just congratulate us for being where we are. And also, I want to thank each and every one of you all for putting your trust in us. Whether this is your first time coming to the office, you learned about us through this video right now, or word of mouth, or whatever the case may be. When I promise you something and I say that we're doing this for you all, you have my word, we're doing this for you all. So, Eastside Dental Group, year 2, on the way.
On the way.
No.
Cool.